Hi guys, I'm Kasha. Welcome to the channel and welcome, as always, to our coffee times to discuss books and horror. And today I am bringing you the new horror releases for the month of April.
It's coffee time!
Unfortunately, I'm still kind of with a cold. It's one of those colds that doesn't really get you sick, but at the same time, it just never leaves. I have been like having to blow my nose and with a sore throat for like a week, and it doesn't get worse, but it's also not going away. So we're just gonna roll with it. Because those new releases, they are not waiting on me. So let's talk about the new releases for the month of April. As always, these are going to be mostly thrillers and horrors, and these are all the ones that I could find. I have a total of 27, so that's quite good for the month. Also, please do keep in mind that some of the release dates might change depending on your country where you live, because sometimes books come out later or earlier depending where you live. And now let's go and check all of those 27 things. First of all, let's start with a sci-fi horror novella. So this is a short read and also is a sci-fi horror, which we know we don't get enough of. And this one is called The Scourge Between Stars by Ness Brown. This is a claustrophobic sci-fi horror, and we are inside of a ship. So in this ship we have, you know, the humans are on board, and we have a captain trying to keep the people alive on their way back to Earth. They come back from a failed colony on a distant planet, and obviously their way back home is not going to be that easy. There is an intruder on the ship, so they will have to figure out what's going on if they want to make it back to Earth all alive. Next we have a horror mystery thriller called House of Cotton by Monica Brashears. We follow Magnolia. She's 19 years old and she doesn't feel like she has much to look forward to in life. She's broke, she's basically an orphan, and she doesn't really like her job either. One night while she's working at her job at a gas station, she receives the visit of a man called Cotton, and this man offers her to bring luck into her life. And just, you know, to repay him for that, she needs to work a job for him, which is working as modeling at his funeral home. So I'm like, how is that supposed to work? That doesn't sound really good to me. But yeah, that is basically the pitch for the book. Then we have another mystery thriller that I'm really looking forward to, even though the books are fairly similar, but it is the new book on the You series by Caroline Kepnes, and the new book is going to be called For You and Only You. I'm not sure if this is the last one on the series. This is number 4. I have read the other 3 and I've really enjoyed it. There is some comfort to me to read about the main character and his basically delusional mind. So of course Joe Goldberg returns in book number 4, and I just cannot wait to see who he falls in love next and what kind of idea he has of love. And of course all of the secrets, the twists and turns that the author always offers. If you are unfamiliar with the books on the You series, it is about Joe, a guy that has a very weird concept about relationships with females, and every time he falls in love things go wrong and people get killed. Yeah, so everything is told from his own mind and his own perspective, and I really like to dive into his mind. Now I know these are not the best mystery thrillers you will ever read, but they bring me comfort. There's something that I love, you know, to read just the thoughts of Joe's mind on the page, and I'm really looking forward for number 4. Moving on, we have another horror novella, and this one is called Ling Hun by Ai Jiang. This is a modern gothic ghost story by the Chinese-Canadian immigrant author. The book is set around a town called Home, and it is a place where, you know, people that have died, their ghosts, the people that have not been able to move on to the next stage, they all stay in this place, in this town, as spirits and ghosts because they are unable to move on. Next we have a queer contemporary horror story. We have Natural Beauty by Ling Huang. We follow a Chinese family that is looking for a better life for their daughter, so they move to the States looking for that better life. But sadly, after an accident that leaves them debilitated, the daughter is unable to reach her dreams of a career, so she ends up working at a store. It is a high high-end beauty and wellness store, but apparently there is something really wrong with the products that are sold there, all of these beauty and natural products. So I'm really interested because I've never really seen a horror story where we are diving deeper into beauty standards and creams and things like that, and something that might be wrong with the products. I feel like every time I've seen a story like that has been like a short horror story or anything like that, but never like a full-length novel that dives deeper into it. And of course we always have a bunch of short horror story compilations nearly every month, which is great because it gives us the opportunity to discover many new authors and also to have quick reads at hand. So the first one that is coming out in April is called Insomnia by Kelly Kovic. This is the debut by the author, and these are short horror stories all by her. And from disturbing short stories, we go to another classic horror mystery thriller. We have The Insatiable Vault Sisters by Rachel Eve Moulton. We're following two sisters in the summer of 1989, and they are dreaming of the future, of marriage, of what they're going to do with their lives, but they are unaware that their lives are going to change forever because their parents are planning to separate, to divorce, and they are also planning on separating them now that they are both the kids are coming of age. So they decide maybe it's best if we just split, and we also split the children. 10 years later, after the sisters were separated, the father passes away. So the sisters get in touch again for the father's funeral. So Henry, the sister that had left the island, comes back for the father's funeral, and she realizes that there is something really wrong in this place. This is a story that is actually told from 4 different female perspectives, and I love a good tale told from different points of view, so this is one that I'm actually really intrigued about. And now we go back to short horror stories. We have They Hide, Short Stories to Tell in the Dark by Francesca Maria. These are 13 chilling tales about losing control, about feeling powerless, about the nature of fear, among other things. You're gonna find everything here, from zombies to vampires to werewolves, so there's something for everybody. And we have yet more stories. We have, in this case, a book called Nightfall and Other Dangers by Jacob Stephen Moore. You're gonna find here stories about possession, stories about hundreds of adults drowning themselves together at the same time. These are a little bit apocalyptic at times, and most of them are really brutal, so just keep that in mind when you go into them. And I'm going to talk about a YA fantasy horror that I believe in some places it already came out in October 2022, but for some reason it's just being released here in the Netherlands now, so I don't know if it's just the Netherlands or if it's other countries. So for me, it's the first time that I will have access to the book, so I wanted to mention it because it's a book that I also wanted to give a chance, and that is Big Bad Me by Aislinn O'Loughlin. So Evie thinks like she's following a normal life, but that is until her mother disappears. She finds out as well that she is a werewolf, so she and her sister have to kind of hide from all of these supernatural beings that are coming for them. This sounds like it's going to be a really fun and entertaining fantasy horror story with werewolves and vampires and stuff like that, so this is gonna be perfect when you need something just quick to read and that is just fun. And we stay in the YA realm, but this time we have a YA mystery thriller. It is called Let's Play Murder by Kezia Lupo, and this one sounds fantastic. I'm really excited about this one. Veronica wakes up trapped in a manor and in the middle of a snowstorm, and also she's trapped there with other people, including a dead body. So this sounds like your typical Agatha Christie story, and that is also part of why I really like this premise. But the catch here is that this is not a real situation, it is a VR game. So I mean, this just sounds fantastic. Of course there's going to be a prize, so people are playing the game in order to win the prize, but I am expecting things to go really wrong, for people to be killed for real, and that is what I'm here for. I love stories about games that turn deadly, you know, group of strangers that need to figure out a murder mystery. It just sounds fantastic. And we're lucky in April because we're getting yet another novella, which sometimes I miss novellas because sometimes you just need a quick, nice horror read and you don't have time for 400 pages. So our next novella is called Agony's Lodestone by Laura Keating. Aggie's world ended when her sister went missing. 20 years later, she receives a tape that might help her figure out what happened to her sister. So Aggie and her remaining siblings set out to kind of try to figure out what happened to her sister, to decipher the tape's contents, and try to find her sister all of these years after, because they still have hope. Now, the next one. This might not be the most serious horror story you will ever read, but it is a novelization of a horror movie that was also always so ridiculous. I mean, the concept is just so ridiculous that I always loved it just because of how absurd it was. So the book is called Attack of the Killer Tomatoes, or Tomatoes, the novelization by Jeff Strand. If you've seen the movie, or you probably are aware of the posters of how the movie looks like, you already know what you're getting yourself into. So I'm just, you know, hoping for this to be a really fun read. I also don't think like I really need to explain the plot of this, because it's basically tomatoes that turn into killers and are trying to kill people. Moving on to another anthology by different authors. This time we have Bound in Flesh, an anthology of trans body horror, edited by Laura Gislason, and this one contains 13 tales by non-binary authors as well as trans authors that are trying to explore horror, with a lot of body horror in this one, so keep that in mind if you're not a fan of that. I'm expecting these stories to be quite intense and disgusting and gory, because they also include a lot of body horror, so it might not be for the faint of heart. And we have yet another collection of short horror stories, this time all by the same author, and it is called The Wishing Pool and Other Stories by Tananarive Due. And I still need to try something by this author. I've had some of the books on my wish list for a while, but I still haven't read them, and I feel like I have to. So maybe I will start with the short horror stories and get kind of like a feeling of the author's writing, but we shall see. The next book has a really interesting title. It's called The Vile Thing We Created by Robert P. Ottone. Lola and Ian had what they thought was the perfect relationship. Their sex is good, they have a really good life, they go out to restaurants to eat, they go on holidays together, so everything seems to be going smoothly. But they start feeling that living this childless life is leaving them with some emptiness, and they decide to take the next natural step, which is obviously to try to get a child, to have a baby, but things won't go as expected. And next we have been blessed with another horror sci-fi, this time a full novel, and it is called The Marigold by Andrew F. Sullivan. So it is in a near future Toronto where we still have kind of an environmental chaos, so we are still having trouble even in the future with our environment. But now we also have on top of that a toxic sludge that is making its way through the population. So we have to find a solution to combat this new toxic enemy. It is some sort of toxic mold, and to be honest, mold is something that always kind of scare me a little bit, because mold is a lot more dangerous than we think, and it spreads very quickly. I believe the story also includes creatures, and this is considered an eco-fiction, like a sci-fi with some you know, commentary on our environment and climate and stuff like that, so it sounds quite interesting. Our next candidate for the month of April is a horror mystery thriller, and we have Sisters of the Lost Nation by Nick Medina. This is a story about a young native girl trying to figure out why the women in her tribe are all disappearing. So she dives a little bit deeper into the past and the myths of her own tribe, trying to figure out what happened to these women. Soon she will find herself hunted as well. So this sounds really interesting, and I love things that talk about myths in other tribes and other cultures. So you could consider this mythological horror, but we also have thriller elements added to it. So it sounds like the perfect mix. Next we have a horror fantasy retelling, and this is a retelling of the story of La Llorona, and that is a folklore tale from Mexico. We've already seen a movie done on this. It's a movie part of the Conjuring universe, and the movie was called The Curse of La Llorona. Now we have a novel that is a retelling of the story, and I'm really excited about this one. It is called The Hunting of Alejandra by V. Castro. So Alejandra, she is a wife, a mother, a daughter, but she feels like with time she has kind of forgotten who she really is. She has lost touch with who she really is, and she also feels like there is some sort of darkness consuming her. So one day she starts seeing these crying women all dressed in white, and we all know that that is La Llorona. We all know about the tale of her, how she came to be this ghost, and I'm just really excited because I really like this story of La Llorona. And yeah, I'm really excited to dive into this one. The next book, it is by Catriona Ward, and I have seen that in the Netherlands it comes out already in April, but then in Goodreads it says that it's not coming out until August, so I'm a little bit unsure about the publication now. I don't know if it depends on the country, so I thought I would just mention it here so that we already know it's coming. If not in April, then you guys will probably get it in August. And it is another horror thriller, obviously, and it's called Looking Glass Sound. It is the story of a serial killer in England, and it is told through the people that lived in that village while the serial killer was active. I'm really interested, of course, because everything that involves serial killers, you guys know I'm all in. And I always have loved how Catriona Ward brings a level of psychological horror into her thrillers. I really enjoyed The Last House on Needless Street. I was not such a huge fan of Sundial, but I still really want to read more by her because I really like her writing. Next we have another adult horror book called It Looks Like Dad by Jay Krawczyk. I hope I pronounced that correctly. And this one, I mean, just the title, it already sounds intriguing to me. It already sounds like, you know, The Invasion of Body Snatchers or something like that. A social worker is called to pick up her husband from the local police station, but when she gets there, the man that she sees in front of her doesn't feel like it's her husband. It looks like a copy, like a bad doppelganger from her husband, but he insists that he's going to take her and the kids out to a cottage because he feels like they might be in danger and they need to go away from civilization. We continue with horror, and we have a horror queer YA called This Delicious Death by Kayla Cottingham. It says it's a book that it's going to please people that love the movie Jennifer's Body. I really love that movie. I thought it was genius. I really enjoyed it. So of course it already sparks my interest. If you love the movie, you'll like this book. 3 years ago, the melting of Arctic permafrost released a pathogen that basically only affected a small amount of the civilization, but those that were affected with it, they developed something called the Hollow, and they were no longer able to consume food, and instead of having proper food, they basically needed to feed themselves with human flesh and blood and stuff. So yeah, that's where we are, and that already sounds fantastic to me. However, scientists were able to create a kind of fake human meat that the people affected with this hollowing could eat. But I'm pretty sure that things are gonna go down a very different route here, and we're not gonna end in a good note. Our next book is for people that love ghost stories. It's called Haunted Ground, The Ghost of Laskin's Farm by Kaylin Lloyd. We follow Kat. She's an ex-con and she's running away from cartel assassins, and she decides to pick as a hideaway a farm that is very isolated. So she thinks, if I hide in this farm, nobody's gonna find me. However, what Kat doesn't know is that there's something a lot more dangerous and evil in that farm than the killers are trying to catch her. Now let's move on to our next book that takes us climbing. The next book is called Never Rest by T.L. Bodine, and this is the story of a guy called Sean that a year ago climbed Mount Everest and then disappeared. So now his wife, Carrie, wants to get an expedition with experienced people, but also join herself. She wants to go to Mount Everest and climb it to try to find either Sean or Sean's body to retrieve it and bring him home. But as they start climbing the mountain, they're going to realize that they are not only fighting against the mountain itself, but there's also something else evil in the place. Moving on to another adult horror book called Curse Corvus by Alex Evenstein. Lindsay and Bob come across something that might grant them happiness, but happiness and luck always comes with a cost. So whatever they're doing has consequences. One of the sisters doesn't care about the consequences and the other one does. So we have here a story about, you know, the things sometimes that you do to get happiness might actually not be the best things you can do. They come with consequences. So it talks obviously about the cost of it all and how far are you willing to go in order just to be happy yourself if you don't care about anybody else. Moving on to a book that sounds also quite interesting, and it's called Your Darling Death by Lauren Carter. So this is basically a wife, now widow, that is telling the story of her husband's life at his funeral, and she is kind of going through everything that happened and revealing a lot of secrets. And last but not least, we have a book called The Mobius Door by Andrew Natberg. So we are in a small town, you know, these towns where everybody knows everybody, and there is not even much violence or much to do for the cops. It's mostly just like minor vandalism and some drunk people, and that's it. The teachers all know their students, they see them all the time in town, and people don't really have many worries apart from, you know, just going to work, things like that, taking care of their kids. But one day one of those kids in the woods opens a door, and something really dark, like a dark cloud, comes out of this door. And from that point on, the town finds themselves in danger, and they lock themselves at home, and they are trying to figure out what to do to survive. So it sounds a little bit like The Fog in a way, but with like a dark cloud that comes out of a mysterious door in the woods that they opened. So it sounds quite interesting, and I love this type of stories. Alright you guys, so these were the 27 book titles that are coming out in April 2023. If there's any other ones that you know of, let me know in the comments. I hope that you found something in this list that piqued your interest. And I'm sorry my energy has not been really high in this video, but I can feel myself sick and you know, struggling still with this cold, but I still wanted to make this video for you, so I hope you still guys enjoyed it. I'm sure I'll come back with my usual energy very soon once this flu, cold, whatever it is, leaves and releases itself from my body.
The power of Christ compels you! The power of Christ compels you!
But until then, you guys, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you all in the next coffee time. Bye!